I never thought I'd be the kind of man who tells a story like this, but looking back, I realized that silence only protects the guilty. This is the absolute truth of what happened to me 2 years ago, a sequence of events that dismantled my entire reality and forced me to become someone I didn't recognize just to survive. It was a Tuesday night in late October, raining hard enough that the streetlights in our cul-de-sac were blurring into jagged streaks of orange on the wet asphalt. I was standing in my garage staring at a crumpled receipt. ID found jammed between the passenger seat and the center console of my wife's car. I'd gone out there to grab her phone charger, but instead, I was holding a piece of thermal paper that time-stamped a dinner for two at a fancy restaurant in downtown Seattle. The dinner took place on a night she swore she was at her mother's house in Portland, helping with a medical emergency. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the sudden, crushing weight of a lie that I knew. In my gut was going to destroy everything, because the last 4 digits of the credit card on the receipt didn't match any card we owned. They matched the corporate card of my best friend and business partner, Julian. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our stories travel. The rain hammered against the garage door, a dull, rhythmic thudding that matched the pounding in my temples. I didn't confront her immediately. That's the mistake most people make. They explode. They scream. They cry. They throw the evidence on the table and demand a confession. But I work in forensic accounting. My entire career is built on the premise that numbers don't lie, but people do, and that if you pull a single thread hard enough, the whole tapestry unravels. I stood there in the cold garage, breathing in the smell of gasoline and wet concrete. I carefully folded the receipt and put it in my pocket. I went back inside, handed her the charger with a smile that felt like it was carved out of wood, and kissed her on the forehead. She didn't flinch. She didn't look guilty. She just smiled back, that same dazzling, warm smile I had fallen in love with 7 years ago, and went back to watching her show. That was the moment I knew. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a performance. To understand why this betrayal shattered me so completely, you have to understand the players. I'm Mark. I'm 42, methodical, quiet, the guy who keeps the engine running while everyone else looks at the paint job. My wife Elise was the paint job. She was 35, radiant, a former PR executive who charmed everyone she met. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a room of strangers and leave with 5 new best friends. And then there was Julian. Julian was my brother in every way but blood. We had been roommates in college. We had started our boutique investment firm together, and we had built it from a laptop on a kitchen table to a multi-million-dollar operation. Julian was the godfather to my daughter. He was the guy I called when my dad died. He was the charismatic face of our company, while I was the strategic brain. Our lives were deeply intertwined. We lived in the same upscale neighborhood, just 3 streets apart. We vacationed together. Our wives went to yoga together. We were the inner circle, the envy of our wider friend group. I trusted Julian with my life. I trusted Elise with my heart. And as I laid in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while Elise slept soundly beside me, I realized that the 2 people I loved most in the world had likely been laughing at me for months, maybe even years. The next morning, the war began, though only one side knew it was fighting. I went to the office early, around 6 a.m. The building was empty, the janitorial staff just finishing up. I sat at my desk, looking through the glass walls into Julian's office. It was messy, chaotic, filled with trophies and photos of him shaking hands with industry titans. I logged into our internal expense reporting system. As a partner, I had unrestricted access. But Julian usually handled the client entertainment budget because, well, he was the entertainer. I filtered the search for the last 6 months, looking specifically for charges at romantic venues, hotels, high-end restaurants, florists. The screen filled with data, and my stomach dropped. There were dozens of charges. Fancy dinners, luxury hotels, all expensed as client development. I cross-referenced the dates with Elise's calendar. The nights she had book club, the weekends she went to spa retreats, the Tuesdays she visited her sick mother. The correlation was 90%. It was a mathematical certainty. They weren't just having a fling. They were living a parallel life on the company dime. My dime. But then, I found something that turned my sadness into a cold, hard rage. I found a charge for a resort in Cabo San Lucas from 3 months prior. I remembered that weekend vividly. Julian had told me he was going to a conference in San Diego. Elise had told me she was going on a girls' trip with her best friend, Sarah, and 2 other women from the neighborhood. I had stayed home with our daughter, feeling like a good husband, supporting her need for me time. I pulled up the invoice from the resort. It listed 2 guests, Julian Vance and Mrs. Vance. He had checked her in as his wife. I sat back in my chair, the hum of the server room the only sound in the office. I felt nauseous. It wasn't just the affair itself, it was the coordination. To pull off the Cabo trip, Sarah and the other friends had to be in on it. They had to be covering for her. I remembered Sarah dropping by the house after that weekend, showing me photos on her phone of them by the pool. I realize now I had never seen Elise in those specific shots with the group. They were staged. My entire social circle was a lie. They were all laughing at me. The inner circle was just a cage, and I was the pet they kept around to pay the bills. I didn't do any work that day. I spent 8 hours downloading every single incriminating expense report, every credit card statement, and every email Julian had sent from his work account that might be relevant. I created a secure encrypted cloud server that none of them knew about and backed everything up. By 5 p.m., I had a digital dossier that could not only ruin Julian's marriage, but could get him disbarred from the financial sector for embezzlement. He was using client funds to pay for some of these meetings, but I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. I needed more. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. I needed to hear them say it.
That evening, I went home and played the role of the tired, oblivious husband. Elise was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, humming a tune. "How was work, honey?" she asked, not looking up. "Long," I said, loosening my tie. "Julian is pushing for that merger with the chaotic startup. It's a headache." She paused, the knife hovering over a bell pepper. "Oh? Is he stressed?" "Yeah, seems a bit distracted lately," I said, watching her reflection in the window. "I think he's seeing someone." The knife came down. "Chop, really?" she asked, her voice a little too high, a little too airy. "Did he say who?" "No," I lied. "But he's been disappearing a lot, leaving the office for hours. I hope he's not doing something stupid." His wife would take him for everything he's worth. Elise turned around then, wiping her hands on a towel. Her face was composed, but her eyes were tight. "Well, men go through phases, Mark. Maybe he just feels unappreciated." "Maybe," I said, grabbing a bottle of water to hide the sneer forming on my lips. "But deception has a way of coming out, Elise. It always does." She looked at me sharply, searching my face for any sign that I knew. I kept my expression bland, just a tired husband venting about work. After a second, she relaxed. "Dinner will be ready in 10. Over the next 2 weeks, I turned our house into a surveillance state. I bought voice-activated recorders, small ones that looked like USB drives or pens, and I planted them. One went under the passenger seat of her car. One went behind the headboard of our bed. One went in her home office. I also installed a keylogger on her laptop while she was in the shower. It was illegal, invasive, and absolutely necessary. The recordings were torture to listen to. I would sit in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store, headphones on, listening to my wife call my best friend the moment I left the house. "He suspected something the other day." Elise's voice crackled through the recording from her car. "He mentioned you were distracted." "Mark is a drone," Julian's voice replied, booming through the car's Bluetooth speakers. "He sees spreadsheets, not people. He doesn't have the imagination to suspect us. He thinks I'm loyal." "I feel bad sometimes," Elise said, though she didn't sound like it. He's a good dad. Being a good dad doesn't make him a good husband, Julian scoffed. You deserve excitement, Elle. You deserve a man who takes what he wants. Mark asks for permission to breathe. Hearing your best friend describe you as pathetic is a specific kind of pain. It's cold. It settles in your bones. But hearing your wife giggle in agreement, that kills the person you used to be. He's planning a surprise party for my birthday next month, Elise said. I saw the emails. God, it's going to be so boring. Just the neighbors and his boring work friends. We'll celebrate properly the weekend after, Julian promised. I booked the suite in Vancouver. The one with the hot tub on the balcony. I love you, she said. I love you too, babe. Hang in there. I took the headphones off and stared at the dashboard. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and angry. They thought I was boring. They thought I was a drone. They thought I was safe. They were right about the surprise party, though. I was planning one. Elise's 36th birthday was coming up in 3 weeks. I had rented out the private room at Ascend, a high-end steakhouse on the 31st floor with a view of the entire city. I had invited everyone, her parents, my parents, the entire inner circle, Sarah, the accomplice, Julian and his wife, Monica. I realized then that the party wasn't going to be what I had originally intended. It wasn't going to be a celebration of her birth. It was going to be a funeral for her reputation. But first, I had to deal with the finances. In Washington state, divorce assets are typically split 50-50 unless you can prove dissipation of asset-spending marital funds on an affair. I had the proof, but I wanted more than just a fair split. I wanted to secure my daughter's future, and I wanted to leave Elise with nothing but her shame. I scheduled a secret meeting with a high-asset divorce attorney in Seattle, a shark named Reynolds, who charged $800 an hour and was worth every penny. I laid out the evidence, the forensic accounting, the receipts, the transcripts of the recordings, which I knew might not be admissible in court, but gave him the roadmap. Reynolds looked over the file, adjusting his glasses. You have them dead to rights on the embezzlement, Mark. If you report Julian to the SEC and the partners, your firm will implode. You know that, right? Your equity will take a hit. I don't care about the firm, I said, my voice steady. I can build another firm. I want to know how I protect my liquid assets before I drop the bomb. We move them, Reynolds said, legally. We set up a trust for your daughter. We pay off debts. We make sure that when you file, the pot they're trying to grab from is significantly lighter, but you have to play it cool. If they sniff a divorce coming, they'll freeze accounts. They won't sniff it, I assured him. They think I'm a drone. The hardest part was acting normal with Julian. We had a partner meeting that Friday. I sat across the mahogany table from him. He was wearing a tailored Italian suit, looking tan and rested, likely from a tanning bed, since it had been raining for a week. He spun a pen in his fingers and joked about the market volatility. You look tired, buddy, Julian said, clapping a hand on my shoulder after the meeting. It took every ounce of my willpower not to break his wrist. Elise keeping you up, he smirked. It was a double entendre. He was mocking me to my face. Just planning this party, I said, forcing a chuckle. I want it to be perfect. Actually, I wanted to ask a favor. Can you give a toast? You've known us longer than anyone. It would mean a lot to Elise. Julian's eyes lit up. Narcissists love a microphone. Of course, man. I'd be honored. I'll prepare something special. Great, I said. And hey, bring Monica. I feel like we haven't seen her in ages. She's been busy with the charity board. Julian waved a hand dismissively. But yeah, she be there. Monica, Julian's wife. She was a sweet woman, quiet, maybe a little naive. She had no idea. She thought Julian was working late, just like I did. I felt a pang of guilt for what I was about to do to her, but she was collateral damage. I couldn't save her without destroying them, and I was done saving people. The week before the party, I initiated the second phase of my plan. I contacted a private investigator, not to find out if they were cheating, but to get high-definition video evidence of them in public. I needed the visual. Numbers on a spreadsheet are one thing. A video of them kissing in a parking lot is another.
The private investigator, Garrett, called me 2 days later. I got it, he said. They got sloppy. Met for lunch at a bistro in Kirkland. Sat on the patio. Lots of public displays of affection. I've got 4,000 video, crystal clear. Send it to the secure server, I said. You want the photos too? Everything. I spent that night editing. I'm not a video editor by trade, but rage is a powerful teacher. I took the footage Garrett sent them, holding hands, Julian kissing her neck, Elise laughing that laugh I used to love, and I spliced it all together. Then I started layering in the other evidence, screenshots of text messages, receipts, and side-by-side calendar comparisons showing Julian S. client meetings perfectly matching Elise S. girls' nights. I built a presentation, a 20-minute documentary of their betrayal. The morning of the party, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. It was the eye of the hurricane. Elise was excited. She spent the day at the spa, on my credit card of course, getting her hair and makeup done. She bought a new dress, a shimmering silver thing that hugged every curve. She looked beautiful. It made me sick. Are you excited? She asked me, adjusting my tie. You have no idea, I said, looking her dead in the eyes. This is going to be a night no one forgets. You're so sweet, she said, pecking me on the lips. I know I've been distant lately, but after tonight, I promise things will be better. She was lying. I had heard the recordings. She and Julian were just waiting for his bonus check to clear next month. Then they were going to blindside me with divorce papers. They wanted the cash first. We'd better go, I said. Everyone is waiting. We took the elevator up to the 31st floor. The doors opened, and the noise of the party washed over us. Surprise! Everyone shouted. Elise feigned shock perfectly. Hands to her mouth, eyes wide, a little teary. She hugged her parents, she hugged her best friend, and she hugged Julian, lingering just a fraction too long, a squeeze of the arm that signaled they got away with it. I watched from the bar, sipping a club soda. I needed to be stone-cold sober for this. The room was packed. About 50 people. My parents were there, looking proud. Julian's wife Monica was there, looking happy to be included. Then it was time for the speeches. I walked to the small stage where a microphone and a large projection screen were set up. I tapped the mic, the room went silent. Thank you all for coming, I began, smiling. Elise, you look stunning tonight. She beamed at me from the front table, holding a glass of champagne. Julian was sitting right next to her, his arm casually draped on the back of her chair. We've had an incredible 7 years, I continued, and I wanted to do something special tonight. I wanted to show you all just how much effort Elise has put into her life recently. I saw a flicker of confusion on Elise's face. This wasn't the speech she expected. But before I start my presentation, I said, my voice dropping an octave, Julian, you promised a toast. Why don't you come up here? Julian looked surprised, but walked up to the stage, flashing his $1,000,000 smile. He took the mic from me. Thanks, Mark, he boomed. Elise ... What can I say? You're the heart of this group. You bring a light into our lives that actually, Julian, I interrupted, stepping to the laptop. Hold that thought. I think the video explains it better. I hit the spacebar. The lights in the room dimmed. The giant screen flickered to life. But it wasn't a montage of wedding memories. The first image was a massive high-resolution scan of a restaurant receipt, side by side with Julian's corporate credit card statement. The room was silent. "What is this?" Julian muttered. Then the text messages appeared, giant bubbles on the screen. "Julian, Mark is such a bore. I can't wait to get you alone in Cabot. Elise, just make sure you book the room under your name so he doesn't see." A collective gasp went through the room. I saw Elise's mother drop her fork. Elise stood up, her face draining of all color. "Mark, stop, turn it off, sit down," I barked, my voice amplifying through the speakers. "I listened to you lie for 3 years. You can sit there for 3 minutes." I hit play on the video. The scene from the bistro played out. Julian and Elise, clear as day, making out. Julian's hands sliding up her thigh. It was undeniable. I looked at Monica, Julian's wife. She had her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Julian lunged for the laptop. "Turn it off, Mark. Are you insane?" I shoved him hard. He stumbled back and crashed to the floor. "I'm not done," I said to the room. The screen changed again, this time to a spreadsheet. "This," I said, pointing, "is a summary of the $145,000 Julian has embezzled from our firm's client accounts to pay for his affair with my wife. Hotels, jewelry, trips." I looked to the back of the room where 2 men in cheap suits had just entered. I had invited them to. And that, I pointed to the men, is the FBI. I sent them the full dossier this morning. The chaos that erupted was a beautiful, terrible symphony of screaming and crying. But as the agents moved toward, Julian and Elise stood there, sobbing. I didn't feel happy. I just felt clean. The fallout was catastrophic and fast. Julian was arrested on the spot. Because I acted as the whistleblower, I was spared the legal wrath. Julian was charged with wire fraud and embezzlement. But watching their world shatter didn't bring me joy, just a profound sense of closure. My old firm's reputation was dead. Honestly, I couldn't have cared less. I watched it all burn down and felt nothing. But Elise, that was a different story. That was harder. She didn't just pack up and leave quietly. Oh no, she actually had the audacity to stay in our guest room for 2 whole days because her own parents would take her in. Even then, surrounded by the wreckage she'd caused, she tried to gaslight me. She told me I had overreacted, that I had publicly humiliated her, destroyed her reputation, just to be cruel. I remember standing in the doorway of the guest room on her last day, watching her stuff designer clothes into a suitcase. "Cruelty," I told her, my voice low and steady, "is sleeping with my best friend for months and making me pay for the hotel room where you did it. This is just accountability." I didn't waste any time. I filed for divorce the very next day. My lawyer was a shark, and he smelled blood in the water. We had irrefutable proof of her infidelity, not just from the receipt, but from hotel records, text messages, everything. We also had clear evidence of her dissipation of marital assets, that money she de-spent on her affair with Julian. The judge, let's just say, was not impressed with her. In the end, she got nothing. No alimony, not a dime. And the custody battle. I was granted full custody of our daughter. Elise was only allowed supervised visitation until she completed a full psychological evaluation. My lawyer insisted on that part, citing her erratic and deceptive behavior. He wasn't wrong. It was a clean, brutal legal victory. But the sweetest revenge, the part that truly satisfied me, wasn't legal at all. It was social. The inner circle, that cliquey group of neighborhood elites, just disintegrated. It imploded spectacularly. Sarah, the friend who had covered for Elise, who had lied to my face for months. Once the full story got out, the other neighborhood wives turned on her. She was completely ostracized. It was like she suddenly became invisible. And Monica, Julian's wife, she didn't hesitate. She divorced him and took him for every single penny the feds did get their hands on first. She was ruthless, and frankly, I admired her for it. As for Julian, my former best friend and business partner, he's currently serving a 4-year sentence in a minimum security facility up in Oregon. He sends me letters sometimes. I can tell from the return address. They're filled with apologies, I'm sure, probably begging for forgiveness, asking if I'll give him a job when he gets out. I burn them, every single one, without ever opening them. Some things are unforgivable. Elise ended up in a small, sad apartment in Tacoma. The PR world, it turns out, is incredibly small, and word travels fast. Nobody wants to hire a known liar who was smack in the middle of a massive embezzlement scandal that took down a whole company. So now, she works as a receptionist at a dental clinic. I see her when she comes to pick up our daughter for her supervised visits, and every time I look at her, it's like I'm looking at a ghost. The fire, the arrogance, that entitled spark she always had, it's all gone. She just looks tired, defeated. She looks like someone who finally realized that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes it's just artificial turf painted over a sewer. She chased a fantasy and fell headfirst into the filth and me. I rebuilt. I had to. I started a new firm, a much smaller one. It's just me and a handful of people I trust implicitly. We're lean, we're efficient, and most importantly, we're honest. I've shifted my focus to forensic accounting. It feels fitting. I now spend my days helping other people find hidden money, uncover financial deceptions, helping people find the truth. I'm not the same man I was before all this. I'll never be that naive again. I don't trust as easily. I check receipts. I watch people's eyes when they talk. I notice the little hesitations, the slight shifts in their stories. The betrayal rewired my brain, made me a human lie detector. But you know what? I sleep soundly at night. For the first time in years, my conscience is clear and my bed is my own. Sometimes, on those quiet, rainy nights, I'll go out to my garage, sit in my old chair, and just listen to the rain drumming on the roof. And I think about that moment, that single, life-altering moment I found that receipt in the passenger seat of my car. In so many ways, it was the absolute worst moment of my entire life. The floor fell out from under me. My whole world, everything I thought was real, was revealed to be a lie. But it was also the moment I woke up. It was the smelling salts I desperately needed. Betrayal is a fire. It's an all-consuming inferno that can either burn you down to nothing but ash, or it can forge you into something stronger, something unbreakable, like steel. I chose steel. And if you're listening to this right now, and you have that feeling in your gut, that little voice in the back of your mind whispering that something isn't right, that something's off, please, listen to it. Don't dismiss it as paranoia. Don't ignore the receipt in the car. Don't explain away the unexplained late nights or the weird credit card charges. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. Pull the thread. I know it's terrifying. You're afraid of what you might unravel, what monster you might find at the end of it. But you have to pull it, because the truth, no matter how much it hurts, is something you can heal from. The lie is a poison that kills you slowly from the inside out. Choose the truth, choose yourself. Thanks for listening.